Hello everybody and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Cataclysm Patch 4.2 DPS guide. As always, this is Draven from the US Burning Legion server, and today we'll be taking care of Arms Warrior DPS. I'll be doing this on my warrior Draven Arik, who has a 359 equipped item level. In part 1 of this guide, we'll be doing stats, spec, rotation a little bit, glyphs, general warrior gameplay, my UI and add-ons, and some macros. So let's jump right in and go ahead and start taking a look at our stats. As an Arms Warrior, your primary stat above all else is Strength. Following that is the hit cap, hit rating until you get the cap of 8%, followed by the expertise cap of 26. Once you've met those caps, your next highest stat priority is going to be crit. That's what you're going to want to be reforging for. You don't want to gem for it necessarily, but it's definitely what you're going to be aiming for on reforging and enchanting. After crit comes mastery, and then at the very end is haste. Nobody wants haste as an Arms Warrior. It's bad. Don't get it. My character has a 3-piece bonus. The set bonus for 2 pieces increases the damage of your mortal strike by 5%. The 4-piece basically just gives you 3% increased attack power, or after using 3 overpowers. Enchant-wise, I'm pretty standard. I got my character's an inscriptionist, so I have the sexy shoulder enchants, but everything else is pretty basic. Getting crit where I can, strength where I can, leg enchants and belt, all that good stuff. Mastery on the boots. Nothing too flashy or special. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the spec. Now, my spec is somewhat, I'll say, controversial. When discussing an Arms Warrior, there's 2 methods of playing. The one that constantly stances, and the one that doesn't. Now let me clarify. What I mean is, the spec that always stances is going to take 2 points into Tactical Mastery. And every time you hit Slam or Mortal Strike, you're going to be in Berserker stance, as with every time you throw Rend or Overpower or Thunderclap, you're going to be in Battle stance. And this is all macroed into my abilities, and I'll show you guys out later. The reason I'm playing the stancing spec is because when looking over it, it gave me higher DPS. However, if you're a relatively inexperienced Arms Warrior, I do not recommend playing the stancing spec because it is much less forgiving on your rotation. What I mean is, if you accidentally switch to battle stance for an overpower before your taste for blood procs, you're going to be in some trouble because you have that downtime. You're just auto-attacking, and when you're auto-attacking, you want to be in Berserker stance. So it's a lot less forgiving. Let's go ahead and look at the rest of my spec. As always, instead of going into what I did take, I'm going to go into what I did not take. I didn't take Second Wind because for PvE, there's just not a whole lot of times you're being stunned or you're immobilized enough to make this worth. PvP is great. PvE, not so much. Drums of War. This is a great talent, especially if you don't manage your rage very well or you don't pay attention to it, because nothing is more awesome than free pummels. It is awesome. This is definitely something you can consider taking. I suggest that you just mess around with your specs. If you're not going to be taking Tactical Mastery, I would put 2 in Drums of War, depending on the encounter, if you're going to be interrupting stuff or not. It's really up to you, but those 2 points are going to be best spent in either Drums of War or Rude Interruption, your call. Improved Hamstring. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to use this in a PvE environment, in a raid environment. It's not that solid of a talent. So for that reason, I just skipped. I don't really need to be immobilizing stuff in PvE, so I didn't take it. Last not least is Throwdown, one of the best PvP talents of this spec. However, once again, not very useful for PvE gameplay. So that is what I took in the arms tree. Going into Fury, I took Cruelty for the increased damage to my Mortal Strike, and I took Battle Trance for the chance of getting some free attacks. As you'll see when I'm on this dummy, at least when I'm on a dummy, rage management is really kind of wonky. It's something you have to really get a feel for, and you can find yourself going rage starved real fast if you're not paying close attention. So this is definitely a good choice. And besides, it helps me get to Executioner. And when we get to our burn phase, where the target's less than 20% health, you make sure you're in the Berserker stance, despite whether you took Tactical Master or not. And you're basically just going to spam Execute while keeping your lamps to the Slaughter buff up by using Mortal Strike. And of course, you'll be throwing in Colossus Smash whenever possible. Now moving over to my protection tree. I personally chose Blood and Thunder. There were enough fights last patch and arguably this patch where this is beneficial. This is definitely for later in gameplay. Offhand, out of the encounters I've seen in 4.2, only Beth's Lock has a lot of adds, probably spreading rend around. These 2 points could easily be moved into Insight, but since I'm a main spec protection warrior, and I just like the utility of Blood and Thunder. I like being able to spread my rend. It allows me to keep my overpower proc up. It's what I prefer. You could easily take 2 points, put them in Insight. If you're not stancing, take one of the tactical masteries and put it in Sight, so you have 3 there. Take that last point, put it in the Drums of War. Go ahead and mess around with it, see what you prefer, see what you like. Let's go ahead and look at my glyphs. For glyphs, I took Mortal Strike, Overpower, and a Slam. They're really the only options we have for primes. For majors, I took Sweeping Strikes, Colossus Smash, and Heroic Throw. Sweeping Strikes because when I use my Blaze Storm, I'm looking to get Rage back. I'm not looking to spend Rage. And it's always best to just throw it on there with it. For Colossus Smash, I took it because once I get 1 stack of Sunder via Heroic Throw, I no longer have to use Sunder Armor. I can just simply use Colossus Smash and everything will be taken care of. So I like the utility of it, and there's not a lot of other strong choices out there for Arms DPS. And lastly, with my minors, they really don't matter, but I took Berserker Rage, Battle, and Demo Shout. If you find something else that you like, go ahead and take it. Let's go ahead and take a peek at my macros. As always, I have my 1 button buffs macro, which is just use my potion or my trinket, Deadly Calm, my potion, Recklessness. Although you can't use them both at the same time, I can have them both in the same macro and I'll just chain them back to back. And then for when I play Fury, it has Death Wish involved. It also has Lifeblood, which is my herbalism special ability, because that haste is always nice when it's free. And the heal is good. That's my 1 button cooldown macro. I'll be going over when to use that more in depth during the rotation in part 2. Let's go ahead and take a peek at my stance dancing macros. Now, if you're familiar with any of my videos, you know I use a lot of alt modifier keys. So if I hold the alt button, my buttons change. That's my personal playstyle, and I'd be happy to provide anybody with an example of one of those. Let's go ahead and take a peek at these stance dancing macros. Now, the way we get these macros to work is we simply add the line /cast and then in brackets stance : 1 for battle stance, and every time I hit my Mortal Strike ability, which I have my bars set up identically, my battle stance and my Berserker stance bars are set up identically. Every time I hit Mortal Strike, you'll notice I'll be switching from battle stance to Berserker stance. And our stances are on a separate global cooldown from all of our other abilities, so this will not affect your global cooldowns on your actual attack abilities. I have it set so that every time I hit Slam, Mortal Strike, or Slam and Mortal Strike, I go to defensive stance or Berserker stance. So for example, I just hit my Rend and my Overpower and I want to go hit Slam. I'm going to hit number 2 and it's going to switch me over here to Berserker stance. My Rend macro, every time I hit Rend or Thunderclap, it's just /cast in brackets stance : 3 battle stance. If you want this for defensive stance, it'd be stance 2. But every time I hit Rend, I'm going to go from Berserker stance to battle stance, throw my Rend on them. You do have to hit it twice, I believe, until you see the debuff on the target, and then you can continue from there. That's all there is to those macros. They're not overly special. You just add an extra line and it does it automatically. There's no key binding the stances that you have to worry about. So it makes it pretty simple in that regard. if you need more explanation on this or need more help, just go ahead and leave me a comment, and I'll be happy to help you guys. Let's go ahead and just talk about general warrior gameplay. As you guys know, we have 3 stances: Battle, Berserker, Defensive. And for Arms DPS, if you're stancing, you're going to be switching between Battle and Berserker. If you're not stancing, you simply just stay in Battle the whole time. Each stance has different abilities and different buffs. Battle stance, you have the increased damage and the decreased damage taken. Berserker stance is simply a 10% increased damage. It's just balls out, more damage. This is what you want to be in when you're casting Slam, Mortal Strike, auto attacks, if possible, Colossus Smash, Execute Spam, Blade Storm. That's where you want to be in Berserker stance. The only time you really need to be in battle stance is when you first apply Rend, if you need to Thunderclap to spread your Rend if you took Blood and Thunder, or if you are taking 2 points, or if you are needing to use Overpower. That's the only time that you should really be spending time in battle stance. And you'll see as I'm doing my DPS test in part 2, I will constantly be switching between the 2 of these. And again, it's personal playstyle. For me, it came out on top by a little bit, so it was enough for me to want to stay with the stance dancing spec. Alright, let's go ahead and take a brief overview of my add-ons and my interface. Up top, we have an add-on called Titan Panel. It's simply just a utility add-on. You don't need it for DPS. This is called ForteXorcist. It's a cooldown counter outside of my Omni CC. It's really nifty for tracking internal cooldowns on trinkets as well as certain procs. I use it for Blood and Thunder. It's very nifty. This is a chat add-on called Prat. It's really it's a great add-on. It's cosmetic. It lets me do some cool stuff, but it's not going to help you with DPS. The map is all nice and shiny because of sexy map. Not going to help your DPS. My bars are set up like this thanks to Bartender 4, and they are in circles with little nice goldenly looking outlines thanks to button Facade. Totally cosmetic. I took it. Right here we have Recount, Omen, and Skada. Sometimes Skada seems to pick up numbers that the other one won't, that Recount doesn't, so I run them both. If I'm raiding, I have one set to healing, one set to DPS, and I like to be able to keep track of everything. This is called DHUD 3, Heads Up Display. It's just a nice way to get a general idea of how much rage I have without looking at my bar. Other than that, there's nothing real fancy going on, and let's go ahead and take a peek at a general quick overview of rotation. Now, just on a pure basis, our rotation, quote unquote, is simply a priority order. You want to make sure you have Rend on the target. You want to make sure that Mortal Strike stays on cooldown as often as possible. You want Colossus Smash on cooldown as often as possible. And you want to make sure you don't waste a Taste for Blood proc with Overpower. You want to use Overpower every chance you get. If you're really good at timing it and you have an add-on like ForteXorcist to help you track your Blood and Thunder, or your Taste for Blood, you can get 2 Overpowers back to back. That 1.5 second global cooldown that they were supposed to put in on it, I haven't seen any notice of it. Back to the priority order, I would say Rend over Colossus Smash, over Mortal Strike, over Overpower, over Slam. If you have excess rage, use Heroic Strike. If you have a downtime, use either Battle Shout or Heroic Throw, whichever you have. If you are rage starved, go ahead and use Blade Storm. If it is a single target fight, if there is no chance of AoE, go ahead and just use Blade Storm. Cooldowns. Our cooldowns, besides trinkets, potions, stuff like that, we have Deadly Calm, and we have Recklessness. Deadly Calm, I like to have macroed first in my DPS macro. That way, I hit my potion, I hit my trinket, and then I get Deadly Calm, and I just get a whole bunch of rage and a bunch of attacks lined up. Once Deadly Calm wears off and I'm basically at full rage, I'm going to immediately hit Recklessness to take advantage of all that rage, and use Slam, Mortal Strike, Overpower, Heroic Strike if I have excess rage, Colossus Smash. I'll go over more in depth in part 2 about when to use your cooldowns, how to use them, and a more general look at rotation. To be everything for part 1. I will see you guys in part 2. Take it easy.